Welcome to the Diplomacy Show. In this age of instant communication, when presidents, prime ministers, foreign ministers talk to each other often, meet frequently, or tweet each other, people often ask if diplomats, embassies, ambassadors continue to have any relevance, or if their role has changed dramatically from before. And although there is instant communication now available and large volume of information coming from different sources, you still need someone who can give you authentic interpretation, an authentic evaluation of development and events, and also anticipate events. The role of the ambassador, the role of the individual, once again comes into play. It is in that framework that I wanted to speak today to Ambassador Frank Hans Dannenberg Castellanos, the ambassador of Dominican Republic to India. The Dominican Republic, a small island or sharing an island with Haiti in the Caribbean Sea, a country of about 10 million people, per capita income of $17,000. He has been here in India for more than 13 years and is currently the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. Hans, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Normally, an ambassador serves in a country for 3 years, 4 years, and the sending country very often feels that if an ambassador has been in another country for too long a time, he represents not his own country, but the country where he is posted. He begins to understand the concerns of that country. And so it is unusual for an ambassador to be posted for so long. I remember the Soviet ambassador to the USA many years ago, Anatoly Dobrinin, was posted for almost 19 years, which was unusual. And he was seen as having access to the Soviet leadership and understanding American society. But tell me, in your context, how is it that you've been here for 13 years in India?
It's not usual. I'm probably the first ambassador in my ministry who's been so long. It's been a number of things that have happened. I first came to open the embassy. We did not have an embassy in India, so I came to establish the embassy.
When was that?
This was in 2006.
So it was only in 2006 that you established an embassy?
A resident mission here. We signed diplomatic relations in 1999, and we established, decided to open a resident mission here in 2000.
And why did it take you so long to establish diplomatic relations? Because India became independent in 1947. So why so long in 1999 that you're establishing diplomatic relations?
Well, unfortunately, the governments we had in the past looked more at the region. You know, they looked more at relations with the Latin American, Central American, and Caribbean countries. They really didn't look beyond. We did have a historical relation with Taiwan since 1948, and we did have an embassy in Japan and embassy in Spain. Other than that, all our other missions were in the region. It was not after 1996 that a new government came into power, and he started looking at diversifying our diplomatic relations and opening embassies in other countries in Europe, we opened embassies in Egypt, opened embassies in Morocco, South Africa, Qatar, India. So it was not till that moment that we started looking beyond Spain.
And so in your thinking, when you identified India as a country to open a resident mission, how did you see India? What was the value attached to opening this mission?
It was very interesting because when I was approached by my president, I was the Deputy Minister of Tourism. And he first approached me he offered me for me to go open our embassy in Moscow. Because we were at that time, the tourism out of Russia was growing, and we were having direct flights from Moscow, which I developed while I'm the Ministry of Tourism. So he said, I want you to open the embassy. So I went to Moscow, I did some due diligence, I prepared some information, and when I came back, he said to me, there's a political situation within the party, someone that studied in the former Soviet Union, who speaks Russian, who's married to a Russian-speaking person. So he said, I'm going to appoint you in another embassy. He didn't tell me which one until one day I got a call at 1 in the morning saying, I've decided I'm going to appoint you in India. I said, India? I mean, it was like the last place I thought of going.
Because far away from the Dominican Republic.
It was very far away, and really I had always thought of countries that were generators of tourism, you know, because I was in the Ministry of Tourism. I thought he would want to appoint me somewhere where there was a tourism relation with Dominican Republic. But when my president explained to me why he wanted India, I thought it was a very unique situation. We have a very big diaspora of Dominicans living in the US. And after 9/11, a lot of those Dominicans were being deported for various reasons, whether because they were illegal or because they had committed some crime. And sometimes the adults being deported brought back young kids, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, who had been living in the States all their life. So he wanted to establish relations with India and have a resident mission here to attract Indian call centers, to establish Spanish-speaking call centers in the Dominican Republic so that it would generate employment to those young English-speaking Dominicans that would return. He was afraid that we would go through the same situation that countries like Honduras, El Salvador, even parts of Mexico were going through with the mass deportation of their citizens coming back from the US.
And leading to a lot of violence in those
and
countries.
creating violent gangs and crime. So he said, I want to bring these call centers so that they would provide Spanish-speaking services to the American companies and generate employment for the young Dominicans that live abroad, that are coming back because their parents are being deported.
And was your objective achieved? Did some Indian companies set up call centers there?
So when he explained this to me, I thought it was a very interesting concept. So he told me, please go to India, establish the embassy, and bring me at least one Indian company that establishes here a call center. At that time, some Indian companies have been established in Costa Rica and in Mexico. So I came, and within the first year we had 14 Indian companies in Dominican Republic, and this has generated employment for more than 2,000 Dominicans, mainly a lot of kids from those deported Dominicans from the US. And you know, although crime has gone up in parts of the country, a lot of people say that they have never reached the levels that other countries have reached, mainly because there's this employment source of call centers.
So what you're saying to me is that the Indian IT companies set up call centers also in Dominican Republic. And while the advantage of having them in India is the use of English language and to work on a 24/7 cycle because of the time difference. But in Dominican, they use the Spanish language, which is also used in America, and it works on the same time zone. So that's another.
Because you see, there's a big Hispanic market in the US, and a lot of companies provide toll-free numbers in English and Spanish. So the Indian companies that are in Bangalore offering the call center services to these companies did not have enough Spanish speakers in India to be able to obtain also the contract for the Hispanic market. So a lot of the Indian companies started going to Mexico or Costa Rica and establishing call centers there, so that if you called from the US on a 1-800 line, let's say to an airline or a rental car, and you press 1 for English, it will go to India. If you press 2 for Spanish, it would go to Dominican Republic.
Well, I must congratulate you on being able to attract Indian companies to Dominican Republic, and of course it has consolidated the relation between two countries. But having opened the mission here in 2006, how did you manage to stay on for 13 years? How did that come about?
In my country, whenever you go to open a mission, you usually stay an extra year. Instead of 4 years, you stay 5 years. It happened that when that 5 year was over, we had been trying to get a state visit for my president, and it was given for the following year. So my president said, why don't you stay in India and work this state visit, since you've been the person in India for the first 6 years. After the visit, which was very successful, my president came with 66 businessmen from my country. So he told me, why don't you stay another year to follow up on my visit? Then we had a change of government, and we had a high-level visit from India go to the inauguration of my new president. And in there was a conversation, and they mentioned how active the embassy had been. And although I had already been offered another embassy, my president said, if India is happy with you, you should stay in India another year. Then later, I happened to have met Prime Minister Modi in Gujarat, during Vibrant Gujarat. And I had organized...
And that was when he was the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister?
When he was the Chief Minister in Gujarat. And he wanted to meet with a number of Latin American ambassadors. And there were some hesitations from some of my colleagues saying that he's a candidate. If he doesn't win, it might look bad with the government right now that we're meeting opposition leaders. So I came with a creative solution. I came with a solution of creating a Latin American Gujarati business conclave. And that would give us an excuse to go to Gujarat, not to meet a political candidate, but to have a business agenda and have the opportunity to meet the chief guest of Gujarat. So during that meeting, he promised that if he would win the elections, he would go to Latin America as his first visit abroad, because the fact that the first group of ambassadors that had met him as a candidate was the Latin American group. And he complied with his promise. Once he won, he went to Brazil for the BRICS meeting, and it coincided with a CELAC meeting, which was a meeting with all the Latin American presidents and foreign ministers. And in that meeting, although I was already posted some other place, there was a conversation between my president and him, and my president was very impressed that he knew me by name, that he mentioned that Dominican ambassador had organized his meeting and that he was in Latin America because of that. So he called me and said, no, you should stay another year.
Could you share with us one or two major issues that you had to raise with the Indian government on behalf of the diplomatic corps that is based here?
Well, I think the biggest issue was demonetization, because a lot of the embassies were caught by surprise like everybody else.
How did it affect embassies?
In many ways. I mean, for example, a lot of the countries paid their staff in cash. Other countries paid their rent in cash. A lot of countries were going under construction. Their compounds were being renovated, and they had a large number of cash within themselves to pay the laborers. There was many issues that came. A lot of nationals of our countries were visiting, and they had changed cash because they were going to doctors or they were going on medical tourism. They had changed a large amount of cash to rupees to pay for the hospital bills, and suddenly they couldn't pay their bills because they had the old currency. And when they went to change the money, they would tell them, you need to have an ID, you need to have a bank account. No, I'm a tourist. Oh, then we cannot change the money. So there was a lot of issues that affected the nationals of our countries that were studying here, that were visiting here, and just like it affected everybody else.
And by talking to the Ministry of External Affairs and the Government of India, you were eventually able to resolve these issues?
Well, it took time. I mean, we got a little frustrated because the responses were not coming quickly. MEA, I understood that MEA also was expecting the answers from the Ministry of Finance. There was a lot of confusion in the whole country. A lot of diplomats were getting very anxious because they were not used to not being able to access their money. So I was a little bit of the spokesperson, the coordinator, try to calm them so that we can find solutions, and we did. I mean, a lot of the embassies that had large amounts of staff, a lot of the staff did not have bank accounts, and how can we pay them if they don't have bank accounts? So we set up with State Bank of India some meetings so that they would go to the embassies and open the bank accounts for a lot of the staff that needed to get paid, and we didn't have a way to get paid.
And other than the challenge emerging from demonetization, was there any other major issue that you've handled?
GST, when GST changed, the rules changed. There was a lot of confusion. A lot of people didn't know how to.
And how does it apply to diplomats? Is it because foreign diplomats under the Vienna Conventions should not be taxed by local authorities? So if there's a tax, you have to reimburse that.
There's a reimbursement of taxes, and it changed because then also with the GST changes, it came that it was based on reciprocity. So whatever the other government was giving Indian diplomats abroad, it would be the same for those diplomats. So some countries that were used to getting certain reimbursements suddenly did not get those reimbursements because their government were not giving it to India, which is fair. And at the same time, we had the issue that the instructions on how to do the process changed completely from doing it every 6 months manually to doing everything digitalized in the system.
Moving on to the bilateral relationship, and as you mentioned,
I want to add something else. We had a very interesting, not too long ago, we did a visit to Kumbh Mela. All the ambassadors. Kumbh Mela. Yeah, a lot of ambassadors have never did not understand what Kumbh Mela was, or other people were afraid of Kumbh Mela. They were afraid that
the number of people,
and they would tell their nationals, don't go, it's not safe. So External Affairs Minister Swaraj was very keen that we go as a group, and we organized this with the President Chief of Protocol, Nagesh Singh, and it went out very well. We all went as a group, we all did the process, we all took our flags, and it was very well organized. It was everybody was very happy. We were very well received by the locals. And it was very well structured, and we understood Kumbh Mela a lot better. And I think that citizens that come to India now for Kumbh Mela do not get this advisories that don't go, it's not it's not safe, because
So they've
now,
been reassured after
yeah,
this.
so now a lot of ambassadors understood what Kumbh was all about, understood how it's done, and it was a very positive thing, which I think we should repeat it in other regions of India.
Well,
So
perhaps as the dean, you can recommend that to
yes,
the foreign
we've
ministry.
already worked Kumbh, and this was the starting point, and we're planning to do other trips, or the organized trips.
So moving on to the bilateral relationship, of course you referred to the visit of your president focusing on cooperation in economic sectors, in IT, pharmaceuticals and other areas. I was noticing the trade between the two countries, and it has reached now almost a level of $1 billion, and it has increased tremendously in the last few years, and obviously you would have worked and contributed to that effort. But one interesting aspect in trade struck me, that there's a major export of gold from Dominican Republic to India, and gold is something that's in high demand in India. How do you explain that?
Well, you see, when I opened the embassy, the trade was very minimal. And it was all one way. I mean, we bought pharmaceuticals from India. That's about it. Now it's become a more balanced trade between both countries. India has now become the 4th largest trade partner of the Dominican Republic. So it's become an important trade partner for us. And we have very big gold mines, and the Barrick Gold, which is an Australian-Canadian firm that handles those mines, have decided to sell all the gold to India. So all the gold that is extracted from Dominican Republic is coming to India right now. We also have the fact that in the past only the Dominican rum, I mean the only rum that was brought into India were from Commonwealth countries. We worked hard to get other rums available in the Indian market. And although some Indians don't like to drink rum, they think rum is for the army, and it's not a refined drink for many Indians. When they taste our rum, they say, no, this is not rum, this is cognac, because we have an aged type of rum, and there's a liking now for this aged rum.
You made a wonderful sales pitch for
Yes.
the rum from the Dominican Republic.
And from other countries in the Latin American region, because there's rums from Guatemala and Venezuela also being sold in India now, because of the fact that we took away this Commonwealth limitation.
This year marks the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Does he mean anything to people in the Dominican Republic?
Definitely.
Are you observing it in some way?
Definitely. In Dominican Republic, every town has a street called Gandhi. There are 2 monuments to Gandhi. We have monuments to Tagore in Dominican Republic. Tagore is very well known in our country, because he had an Argentinian relationship. There's a link between Latin America and Tagore. But Gandhi is a very important persona in our country. We just launched a postal stamp celebrating the 150th anniversary of Gandhi in the Dominican Republic during the visit of V. Muralidharan to my country. And India, when I say India in my country, people immediately think of Gandhi, immediately think of Tagore, they think of yoga, they think of Sai Baba. There's a lot of connection with Latin America and Sai Baba. So India is very well liked in my country. The Bollywood movies are liked, the Indian culture is there.
Hans, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your region. Of course, Hispaniola, the island where Dominican Republic, which shares with Haiti, was the first inhabited island that Christopher Columbus had visited in 1492. So it has that historical significance. But recently, that whole region has been hit by a major storm, Dorian, causing a lot of devastation. Has that impacted Dominican Republic, or have you faced such storms in the past, and what kind of devastation do they cause? How do you recover from that?
Well, you see, hurricanes usually start in the Cape Verde Islands, and they come towards our region, but we don't know towards what island is going to hit first. I mean, some hurricanes go southward and hit the Lesser Antilles or the West Indies, like Trinidad and Grenada, Barbados. Other go a little further and hit Puerto Rico, and then go up north to the United States. Other go into Cuba, and southern part of Cuba, hit Jamaica, and then hit Mexico. And we've been hit with major hurricanes. I remember in 1979, David destroyed our country. In 1980, there was another one, Frederick. We've had other hurricanes.
And how long does it take to recover from that with this kind of devastation?
Well, in the past, it took months to restore electricity, to restore water, but now things move up a little quicker.
Till recently, you had relations with Taiwan. And now you have stopped the diplomatic relationship with Taiwan and established with the People's Republic of China. What was the reason for having relations with Taiwan, and what sort of persuaded you to do this shift?
Well, historically, if you see, most of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean were present with Taiwan for many years. It has been in the last probably 20 years that slowly but surely some countries have been shifting from Taiwan to China, mainly because of economic reasons, because of trade and commercial reasons. The trade that we might have with Taiwan is never going to be the same as the trade that we can have with China. We were one of the last countries to do this change, mainly because we also had a very historical link with Taiwan, because we were the first country that recognized Taiwan. And this was because our president of the Dominican Republic at the time in 1948, had gone to a military academy with Chiang Kai-shek. So there was a personal friendship between them, and we became one of the first countries to recognize Taiwan. And this kept us away from China. Although we had a trade and cultural promotion office in China, we were not having full diplomatic relation. Now, being a country that depends on tourism, we receive 6 to 7 million tourists a year, and we want to increase...
In a population of 10 million.
Of 10 million, and we have one of the largest number of hotel bed offers in the Caribbean. We always see markets, potential markets. And although China is very far away, we've seen Chinese tourists now venturing into Cuba, into the Bahamas, into Mexico, into other countries in Latin America. So the tourism industry was very keen in being able to have relations with China, because China would not allow their nationals to travel to those countries that don't have relations with them. So for many years there was a pressure from the tourism industry that we had to change our alliance, because unfortunately China does not allow you to have relations with both. It is a one China policy. So for many years there's been pressure from the private industry that we should be present in China, and that time came where we did happen.
One last question I wanted to ask you was about your relationship with the US. Really the dominant global power, certainly the dominant power in the Americas region. So how is your relationship with the US, and has it been impacted by the unpredictability that the present administration in the US has brought to many global issues?
Well, we have more than 1 million Dominicans living in the US.
So almost 10% of your
10%
population,
of the population
is
in the US. It used to be that they were mainly in New York. Now they are in Florida, they're in Texas, they're in the Carolinas, they're in Massachusetts. The Dominican community in the US keeps growing. Their importance within the Hispanic community keeps growing. That we now have senators and congressmen in the US that are of Dominican origin. Yeah. Just like there's Indian origin in the US as well. The constant traffic of people, the people-to-people contact between Americans going to the Dominican Republic for tourism, between Dominicans going to buy and do business in the US is immense. And we are part of this free trade agreement called DR-CAFTA. So Dominican Republic, Central America Free Trade Agreement, we are part of that. So that means that US products and Dominican products can go both ways through this trade agreement. This is one of the other reasons why India should be present in our country, because by an Indian company producing certain things in Dominican Republic, they have access not only to the Caribbean market and the Central American market, but sometimes to the US market, depending on what products they have. So this is another point for India to have an embassy in Santo Domingo. So the importance of the relation is there. I mean, we are a sovereign country, we are independent minded, we have friends, we are trying to be neutral and we have friends with everybody, but we do have that special relation with the US that we have to be respectful of, and it becomes very challenging sometimes within different governments and the way they treat our immigrants or the way they look at the region in different ways. But we've always managed to maintain very close and friendly.
Well, as they say, sitting or lying next to an elephant is not always so easy. But Hans, I want to thank you for joining us for the show and sharing your perspective with 13 years of experience in India, being the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. And I think as India looks at expanding its footprint globally and enhancing its global role and profile, including in multilateral organizations, every vote counts.
And I want to congratulate the MEA because in the last year we've seen a large number of high-level visits from India, President, Vice President, MOSs, and we've seen now for the first time in 4 years, I received President Macri on a state visit to India this year. We hope
from Argentina.
From Argentina, and we hope to see more state visits from Latin America to India, and we want to see more high-level visits from India. I understand 2 more countries in the region are opening embassies here soon, Jamaica and Nicaragua. So it just shows that India is present in Latin America. We want to be more present in the Indian mind.
Thank you, and good luck with your continued effort in promoting relations between India and the Dominican Republic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.